happening, folks? This is Akee Jamal Durham, and what I'm about to present this time is actually a successful relationship snippet. Now, this snippet is not only brought to you by myself, but also by Together Pittsburgh. I'll give a little bit of background about myself and Together Pittsburgh. I recently was fortunate enough to graduate from Liberty University with a Master's in Arts degree in Human Services Counseling with an emphasis in marriage and family therapy. And while that degree does allow me to practice as a clinical therapist and as a counselor, that is not necessarily my professional DMO, if you will. In teaching adults in a group dynamics format, based on the fact that I've been working with and for Together Pittsburgh for nearly a decade, and that is the preferred method of delivery for the curriculum that they created. Now, Together Pittsburgh is a coalition of like-minded regional nonprofit agencies here in Pittsburgh and individuals who believe in the strengthening of marriages and the importance of preparing individuals for marriage. Together Pittsburgh has recently kind of revamped itself. They are a ministerial-focused nonprofit, but their curriculum had to kind of pull back from a biblical-centered focus, if you will. Not that they didn't draw on the knowledge that they infused into their curriculum from scriptures, but because they were government funded at that time, they couldn't be very overt about that. And so now that they have sought new funding sources, Together Pittsburgh is probably going to change its programming a little bit, and you'll start to see that Christian influence in their curriculum a little more. Now, for the past 8 years, as I told you, I worked with them, but also for them for a short amount of time. I began working with them as their outreach coordinator and a program manager. And as an outreach coordinator, I was responsible for putting together social media campaigns in cooperation with an organization called PMI. And one of the things that we did was we created memes, kind of like this one you're looking at here, and videos and the like, and posted that type of information to give you little bits, tidbits, tips, helpful hints about your marriage and relationships. And this one talks about what does it mean to be intentional in your marriage. And this is a direct quote from myself in response to such question. And we tend to listen to people with the intent to respond to them. Try listening to your spouse with the intent to understand them. So that's an example of some of the things that we would post in numerous social media platforms. This successful relationship snippet is going to be an example of some of the video clips that we posted in the various social media platforms called Together Talks. I'll give you an example of several of them that I myself personally recorded. First, we're talking about adding a ladder, and that's an acronym, obviously, LADDER, to your toolbox. The next video, we'll talk about compromising comfortably with your spouse. And the third and final one reminds us to remember our vows. That first one, adding a ladder, is basically going to be kind of a review of the do's and don'ts that I gave you in my communications overview video. We're going to take a snippet of these do's and a little handful of the don'ts and create that acronym LADDER, serve as a memory jogger, if you will, in order to help you set up appropriate dynamics for dealing with conflictual conversations. Our first video, adding a ladder to your toolbox.
You may have heard my colleague, Ken McLeod, quoting Max Lucado during one of his Together Talks. Mr. Lucado was noted as saying with regards to relationships that conflict is inevitable, while combat is optional. That outlook is a wonderful tool to have in your collection when tension rises in your marriage. So, when the inevitable conflict occurs, try adding a ladder to your toolbox as well. The acronym is as follows. L, look at your spouse, lovingly if possible. Eye contact is essential in effective face-to-face communication. A, admit to the truth or truths that they are sharing. D, don't deny those truths, no matter how much it hurts. And the second D, don't interrupt. It always comes off as being disrespectful of their feelings. E, emote appropriately. Being careful not to overreact, but honestly sharing your feelings. And finally, the letter R, which stands for respond. Words can cut like knives, but silence can be just as damaging. If you feel the need to process your response before offering it, then communicate that to your spouse. If you use your ladder effectively, you'll find that you can reach higher ground together, even in the midst of conflict.
That concludes adding a ladder to your toolbox. So our next snippet is compromising comfortably with your spouse. And what I do is I give you a kind of a step-by-step guideline to compromising with your spouse, going about it in an organized fashion that allows you to reach compromise a little more readily.
You know what? Sometimes our marital issues are not conflictual. Every now and then, we just can't seem to agree on a course of action. Or we're unable to find a comfortable compromise when we don't settle on what decisions to make as a couple. And maybe something as mundane as what to have for dinner or who's taking the kids to school in the morning. Then again, it could be life-changing matters, like is it time to buy a house? Or should I accept this job offer out of state and move the entire family? A simple change in your approach to mutual decision-making can make all the difference. When faced with an impasse, grab a notebook and a pen and write down each decision at the top of a separate sheet of paper. Create 2 columns beneath each decision, with one column representing the negative consequences of that decision, and the other signifying the positive outcomes that are possible. And once you've made an exhaustive list of the pros and the cons, compare and contrast the 2 columns. Talk through how much weight each possible consequence has, and rank them as best as you can. Keep in mind that 1 or 2 outcomes in either column may be more significant than a sheet full of them in the other. This simple procedure will allow the 2 of you to quantify and qualify all of those possibilities. And working cooperatively at this task will not only create the chance to make a more informed decision as a couple, but it will also foster the cooperative energy to make that decision more readily.
Comfortable compromising. I hope you found that helpful. My last video that I'm going to show you today is remembering your vows. This one talks about the idea of trying to find a midpoint or a 50-50 way of dealing with household chores and those types of things, loving one another, communicating to one another, and having an idea of complete and equal reciprocity. Take a listen.
We often hear terms like reciprocity, doing my fair share, and 50-50 in regards to marital relationships. But let's think about such phrases with respects to the vows you shared on your wedding day. I promise to love, to honor, to cherish, and I'll do so in sickness and in health, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer. Maybe we ought to reconsider the concept of give and take in our marriages when we use those vows as a backdrop. For instance, you may well be able to reciprocate your spouse's loving words and actions when you're both in good health. But what about when you're in sickness? It's likely you can do your fair share when times are better. That's probably not so easy when things are worse. And I'm sure you don't mind going 50-50 when your finances can be categorized as richer. Are you just as willing to do so when the appropriate description is poorer? In difficult seasons, it becomes very natural to keep score. And being overwhelmed by those difficulties can give you the sense that you are carrying most of the weight. If you are truly going to love your spouse, for better or for worse, for richer or for poor, in sickness and in health, then you have to be willing to love them when their best doesn't equal your best. In fact, you must expect that an even trade-off will be a rarity in your marriage. Remember your wedding vows. Always try to do and be your best for your spouse and love them, even when they are not at their best.
Remembering your wedding vows. I hope that one made a little bit of sense to you. I hope that resonated with you. I hope that helps you from day to day, and if not today or tomorrow, sometime in the not too distant future, between yourself and your spouse, learning to love each other, even when someone's best doesn't seem to measure up to yours. That brings us to a close and a conclusion on the successful relationship snippets. And while your marriage shouldn't be the sole source of your happiness, you should try your best to have a happy spouse and create a happy house. Take the time when you have an opportunity to visit us online at www.akijamaldurham.com. You can follow me on Twitter at @AkijJamal or on Facebook at facebook.com/successfulrelationships. Thank you for giving me this time today and allowing me to help you relate.